for the first time in history, you can invest in an immutable set of principles.
So how we went from something in Web2 that didn't make sense to pretty exciting idea in Web3.
If that the next unicorn could be from Georgia?
Had conversations with 170 VCs.
Why did you give up on your dream? Hello everyone, this is Silkroad Podcast, and I'm your host, Asror Arabjanov, co-founder of Silkroad Innovation Hub. Silkroad Innovation Hub is a hub and a platform for founders from Central Eurasia. Here in Palo Alto, we support startups and entrepreneurs from Central Eurasia in discovering avenues to establish or expand their ventures in the US. Here with us today is Georgi Koreli, founder of Web3 startup Hinkal. Welcome, you.
Hi, Asror. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Georgi started his career as a professional sambo athlete, later switching his field into project management, venture capital, and finally being a startup founder himself. Georgi is a Stanford GSB graduate and holds Stanford's master's degree in sustainability. So Georgi is working on Hinkal. Georgi, tell us about your company, what you're working on right now.
Yeah, so Hinkal is a Georgian dumpling, and the idea of Hinkal is that you have different types of meat inside, and you never know before you taste it. And taste is always delicious, so you never know what type of meat you just ate. And that's the idea behind the privacy protocol that we have built. So Hinkal allows shielding on-chain strategies. So basically, confidential transactions on-chain for professional traders. And what I mean by professional traders is hedge funds and individual users. So retail users also can use Hinkal and make confidential transactions. They can send money to you without anyone being able to attach this transaction to certain wallet, as well as to do different yield farming, trading strategies, more complicated ones that lead to a lot of returns to the traders.
So now, to put it simply, it's a privacy protocol, privacy layer that helps prove the possession of information without revealing the information itself.
Yes and no. So it proves the possession of the information, but it also allows you to do the transaction without revealing how much assets you have.
Oh yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but it's not only possession, but also when you do, for example, liquidity provision to the pool, you prove possession, but you also allowed to do the transaction and receive swap token back, right, without revealing your identity.
Okay.
So it's not only possession, but also the next step from it, which is transaction with the dApps.
Mm-hmm. The underlying the end result is that it helps prove that I'm good for the money without revealing who am I and how much money in total I have.
Yeah, but it's a very complicated way to describe it, right? I think for the users, especially non-Web3 users, the best way to explain it is, if I have money on my wallet, everyone can see this money. I'm pseudonymous, what implies that no one can attach this money to me, right? But still everyone can see this money, and then deterministically, if I do certain transactions, it will be easier and easier to reveal the identity behind the wallet. And then the potential risks that it creates is that now people can see all major token and cryptocurrency holders, and they can front run them, they can copy trade them, they can target them for hack attacks. And what Hinkal does, it saves from all these three, right? Because now this money are on your shielded address. No one can see who is the owner of this money, right? Because all of them are inside smart contract. And now you can, and it's fully self-custodial. So now you can do transactions without revealing who you are. So every time when you do transaction, what appears on the blockchain is Hinkal smart contract. And think, for example, last month we had around 3,000 users, new users creating private addresses inside smart contract. And for all these 3,000 addresses, what appears on chain is Hinkal smart contract. So no one can actually know which one of these 3,000 addresses did transaction.
Okay, okay. This is this is really cool, and thank you for the explanation. People like myself who might be listening, who are not deep into Web3, crypto, and DeFi, especially, this has been a good explanation. You're backed by some of the biggest names in crypto. Tim is there, and all of his funds are there. Can you tell me what was it difficult to raise on the idea? Because like I read your tweet that you said when you were fundraising, and everybody kept telling you that no one's gonna do KYC for privacy. Now, like after 2 weeks, your launch, you had 3,000 KYC users. You fundraised about a year ago, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. In February last year.
and it was still like from the legislation perspective, it was still unclear where the U.S. was heading, right? And like, how was the fundraise process for you?
Yeah, it was very complicated process for several reasons. So first reason is that it was a bear market. So we started fundraising right after FTX crash, and then a lot of crypto VCs, also on Web2 VCs, stopped post crypto investments because they didn't know the contagion after FTX crash. So who will default next, and how long it will last. And then the second reason was that we were running out of money. So we didn't have comfort to just do it in a planned manner. So we needed to fundraise because a lot of dependencies were there. For example, Nika moved to the US, right? And then like he was employed by our company, and we had to pay salary, right? I spent a lot of years at Stanford, 3.5, and I have a lot of loans, right? I couldn't extend my stay. So, yeah, so we took all possible risks related to this. And then, you see when there's something that there's a tailwind basically in the idea that you're building. Because before we tried we raised around 320K before, which is not much, right? Especially in the bull market that we had. But we felt that we never had good ideas that people believed. So initially it was community idea that turned into SV icons. Next it was on-chain resume, what also didn't make a ton of sense. But with privacy, we felt that okay, so there are certain triggers that started happening. For example, Vitalik started posting about privacy. Then, like it was Messari report. So, and then we thought, okay, among all ideas that are not getting funded, right, in a bear market, there is one idea that actually there is one vertical, I would say, that still brings interest from investors, and it was privacy. So I think we just were super lucky with the vertical that we chose, and then the market showed this with Draper leading our round and believing in us, and then we have around 15 more investors in the round. But also we had tremendous support from community here from a Bay Area, because we had conversations with 170 VCs ultimately from each part of this world, including Vietnam, France, Georgia, Singapore. So with all of them, so the distribution was amazing.
Georgia, not the state. Not the state, but the country, right? Yeah, you mentioned a couple of names. Everybody knows who Vitalik is, Vitalik Buterin of Ethereum. But you mentioned also another name, which is Nika. Nika is your brother, Nika Koreli, and your co-founder, right? Tell me about Nika. Like, how crucial was Nika to founding this company? Like, he's your co-founder. Who is the brain behind Hinkal now?
Yeah, Nika is definitely the brain behind Hinkal. It was actually his idea. So when we killed previous idea, we took 1 month to brainstorm different verticals in crypto and try to figure out where we believe crypto is going. And so privacy was one of the biggest unsolved problems there because, okay, we had, the premise is that so much money is invested in crypto and a lot of infrastructure questions are about to be solved. But privacy was still the vertical that wasn't solved back then. And then with the premise for blockchain to become the financial industry of this century, so privacy layer, compliant privacy layer should be built there. And this idea like of privacy with compliance attributes was actually proposed by Nika in August 2022.
Wow.
And yeah, so and then we started with, so we realized that there's definitely big unsolved problem, and there's a huge business potential if we build it right.
Okay, thank you. One of the biggest critiques, as I did little research on Hinkal and the companies similar to Hinkal who are addressing the privacy, one of the biggest critiques is that it might enable the scammers, the whatever in the industry. What's your reply to that?
If you look back into crypto, right, and then the primitives that actually were the foundational ones, the beginning, permissionless was always one of the core attributes, right? So anyone in the world can onboard with crypto wallet and then start participation in the global crypto ecosystem, right? But this permissionless attribute brought a lot of attention from scammers, right?
Yep.
Because suddenly you can actually participate in different bad transactions,
Yep.
right? Bad actors can transfer illicit money, do money laundering, etc., etc. Initial, first set of privacy protocols that crypto industry called mixers were actually supporting this because they were permissionless. So now you can obfuscate the links between wallets. That that makes investigation and then probability to reveal the identities behind these wallets really hard for authorities. But in our iteration, right, I actually believe that permissioning on certain level is important for crypto to become the financial ecosystem, because the biggest asset holders are still pension funds, family offices, and this like sovereign wealth funds, and there is no way that they will participate in a permissionless ecosystem, right? When you have counterparty risk, when you have at least like minimum risk of being exposed to some negative behaviors.
Yep.
That's why for crypto to become the financial industry, so permissioning or proving that you are compliant is crucial. That's why we propose this concept of compliant confidential transactions, where you prove that you're not part of any SDN sanction lists, and then you're able to participate and make private confidential transactions, while legal authorities can still request information about who did this KYC if they have concerns.
Okay, so it means here the role of Hinkal is more to help the DeFi as a whole, as an industry, to become more mainstream, to open to the biggest asset categories, right? Yeah. This is really good explanation. Thank you so much. So let's talk about what's happening currently in DeFi. Sometime in mid 2023, you tweeted, "Am I too biased? So crypto has the highest number of daily news compared to any other tech industry." I also feel that because like one of the greatest blog post authors, newsletter providers, Matt Levine of like Bloomberg, writes a lot. There are two topics he concentrates on. One of them is Elon Musk. Always, if there is something about Elon Musk, he writes immediately. And the second one is about crypto, DeFi, whatever comes out, whatever crypto bank is going under, or something happening with the SEC, with the court cases. He immediately writes and writes. He actually has the biggest, by number of words, introduction into crypto in the form of newsletter. He put it out. And there has been a number of wins for the industry as a whole, right? Recently. Can you tell me a little bit about what's happening in US specifically? And do you see the future for DeFi in US?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think US generally is far behind Asian countries because I went to Singapore for Token 2049 conference, and I realized that everyone in Singapore was speaking about crypto.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's such a mass culture there. So everyone talks about DeFi, about gamify, about DePIN, about like what they expect will be the token price for, or if this token is launched. So it's like it's already in the very normal conversations that people are super educated about crypto and what's happening. But then if we think about the reasons behind it, we can see that US, crypto is basically what crypto does in some sense, right? Is enabling people to create currencies, right? So it's democratization of currency creation. So and then through the history of internet, we have democratization of a lot of primitives, right? So now you can buy a house online, right? So like a lot of physical objects are shifting online and becoming digital spaces. And with crypto, you have one of the most important primitives for governments, right? Currency that is heavily dependent on becoming democratized, right? So everyone can you can attach stable coin to USD, right? Can have yield on top of this, then you can create any currency. And of course, right, the reaction that we see from governments, especially from the US government, that is the most, that holds the most influential currency in the world, is hesitation.
Yep.
So now the question is, do we have enough support from just regular people to propagate and to promote currency in like new democratization of currency, right, in a government systems that will create this kind of overton effect and move this needle through all the layers? And probably this is the hardest question to solve with all crypto scams. Like after FTX, Terra Luna, right? There's a lot of skepsis. So there's a highly polarized one side of the country, right, that thinks that crypto is only scam and there is no value in it, and they want to oppose it as much as possible. And highly polarized other side, which is crypto tech maximalists, right? They think that believe that crypto provides great value for each human because it's 24/7, no intermediary. You own your assets. You have, you have economic velocity, right? So more things you have on chain, more transactions you can do, right? More freedom you have to wherever you go. So there's a lot of value, right, from a pure technology perspective, but also a lot of risks, for government officials about having, USD as a major currency. I think that there is still a way to have both, right? So if you digitize and enable crypto, but then you can say, okay, USDC or stable coin back to USD should be the crypto. There is still opportunity, right, to keep the US currency, right, and then still be the most powerful nation in the world while enabling crypto primitives.
Yeah. One of the ideas which I caught, I think one of the guests on SV Icons dinners, he mentioned that the hype around crypto, everyone thought that the crypto is the future, the DeFi is the future, and it's going to be here, it's going to be now, is the reason that so many people now feel like it didn't happen because it was hyped up that much and it didn't happen, and people feel like that's like and lots of schemes like the FTX and many big companies going down, and lots of pump and dump schemes in the industry. Is this the reason many people have this negative view towards crypto? What is your opinion on that?
All industries have speculation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have speculation in real assets, right? In physical assets, you have speculation in any vertical. But then, if you think about what is the closest industry to the value transfer, which is crypto, right? Then it makes you think, okay, then it's very natural to think that crypto should have the highest speculation, right? Because you directly
Yeah.
transact assets.
Yeah.
So speculation phase is then unavoidable phase of crypto.
Mm-hmm.
But now with more, like, one is more regulation, second is more security primitives with guarantees, right, and new protocols appearing on the market with the goal to prevent pure speculation and add the value, such as like the insurance
Mm-hmm.
adding value, right? Like DID protocols adding value, infrastructure projects adding value because they increase the number of potential transactions you can do. So this number of speculation is just going down. And even though I think speculation will always stay there, right? And you have a lot of speculation also in fraud scams in the banks, right? So banks probably is the highest. We have highest number of scams in banks, but no one talks about this, right? Because
Yep.
it's always beneficial to talk about crypto,
Yep.
because you know that because you are already biased to the banks, you want banks to be there, and you don't want crypto, right? So that's a very very natural tendency from people that we will be hearing, right? And it's unavoidable.
Yep. Yeah, this is great. At the same time, we're seeing, with the recent news especially, lots of people turning into crypto, DeFi optimists, right? I've recently read, and you shared, Larry Fink of BlackRock has mentioned that the next step is a tokenization of all assets. That this is where like instant settlements happen, and like everything is immediate. You can go with the voting stocks, like if like everybody owns the certain token towards the stock, and they can immediately vote on the stock. And one of the interesting things I caught on Twitter, of course, Amjad Masad, the CEO of Replit, which I thought as a concept, it was great thing of him to mention it. He he wrote, the wildest thing about Bitcoin is that for the first time in history, you can invest in an immutable set of principles. Imagine if you could invest in capitalism as a whole in the 19th century, but guarantee that you won't be rug pulled later by fiat. This I think is beautiful. Like do you think like the value of the Bitcoin is gonna grow, or value of the Ethereum is gonna grow with like everything what we're saying proves to be correct, that like DeFi becomes the future, everyone starts transacting, everything starts tokenized, and with that the value of the coins will start increasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there are several layers to this for this to happen. So first, right, for coins to start increasing, you need new inflow of capital, right? If tokenization of assets happen, then you have new influx, right, of capital, and therefore each vertical will have enough attention, both from speculators and from real utility providers. So that's one of the wedges for increase. Second is new, like since we have more attention going to crypto, we have new layers, right, solving problems. For example, before, most of value was focused on Ethereum, right? Like last year, it was all Ethereum. So even new L1s shifted to become L2s because Ethereum became so dominant. But now we see that Solana suddenly taking a big chunk from Ethereum. Cosmos ecosystem also brought a lot of attention recently with the YDX going there, in Fusion, Injective, sorry, and several L1s building like more decentralized and kind of higher throughput layers there. So we see that new layers started becoming more and more relevant, right? And we have now the whole Aptos Sui ecosystem with Move language. So with this in mind, right, they solve different problems. For example, Ethereum, now Ethereum, I think, I don't remember what's the market cap. As I remember, like probably the latest time I checked was 200 billion,
Mm-hmm.
right? It implies that all the fees, right? It implies that it will go beyond just financial industry, which will also require higher TPS from social, from DePIN, from IoT, like all like decentralized science, right? That will require a lot of transaction to happen, and then Ethereum will be capturing more and more revenues, right, from the fees, which also goes to security, right? But with new layers, right, popping up and solving these new problems, right, with more efficiency, we might expect that this value will be actually captured by new ones, and then one of the takeaways would be that Ethereum will go down in value, right, because it will be less relevant to build on top of Ethereum.
Mm. Okay. Does Hinkal has plans to do ICO, the initial coin offering? Just
No,
or
ICO, we never plan ICO. I don't think ICO it makes sense for us.
mm-hmm.
I think ICO makes sense for emerging market products, right? They don't have the advantage to be in Silicon Valley, to be backed by great venture capital firms. So, because then they can basically raise from bunch of individuals and supporters. We don't have these plans because we don't have these needs. Also, we are a US team, and ICO is highly risky direction.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned about the pivot, about the previous startup. Tell me about like what was before. Not about the Silicon Valley icons, which we're gonna talk later, but what was before the Hinkal.
Mm-hmm. Maybe for the context, I can share why I decided to move to Silicon Valley, right? And this will be good prerequisite for this conversation,
Yep.
right? So, as you just mentioned, I was professional sambo wrestler for 10 years. So I had this like wrestling experience which is highly dynamic. Kind of it changes. You have competition every week, right? You have this dopamine hit on a weekly basis, and it's quite exciting. Right after I moved to professional career of like business career, I worked 5 years in banking at VTB Capital, and then after the year three, I got bored. So I was doing same. I was growing every year. I was growing. I had promotions, but I was doing more or less same things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking and the managers, right, and like my line managers, their line managers, I never saw myself being them. But I was always excited about founders. I was reading a lot of news about startups and always wanted to build something. And I had several efforts back in Moscow that wasn't none of them was successful, except probably hookah bar. So it we had it for 6 months and then we sold it. Had like some kind of profited a bit, but nothing crazy. And then Stanford was always this North Star for entrepreneurship where I can learn, I can completely reinvent myself and build something. So then I got lucky to get in to GSB, and then basically this phase started. So then I was all in to start something, and from the day one I was doing one first idea. It was in sports betting. It was a bad idea, right? And YC talks about tar pit ideas. So if you have no domain experience, you will likely start a tar pit idea in a consumer space. And I was in this loop of tar pit ideas. First idea was tar pit because I had no domain expertise in anything in the US, right? Then second idea, which was social, that created icons community, also was Tarpit idea about bringing people together around shared things. Third idea was also Tarpit idea about on-chain resume, and in crypto there is one Tarpit idea that everyone starts building, and it's Web3 LinkedIn because it makes sense. But then we had conversations with LinkedIn, with dating apps about bringing these proofs about credentials on chain. No one is interested in this. So, but we started with this Tarpit idea. But then what this enabled is a new vertical, right? That was growing, and it was crypto.
Yep.
Right. So I think the best vertical for new opportunities for newcomers are these new growing ecosystems that are heavily invested by Silicon Valley venture capital firms, such as crypto, AI, sustainability. So in these verticals, you have still high chances to succeed if you have enough passion, devotion, great team, and if you are especially in Silicon Valley. So that's basically the prerequisite for Hinkal, how we went from something in Web2 that didn't make sense to pretty exciting idea in Web3, where it reminds me my experience in wrestling, right? Because now I truly feel myself highly energized all the time, because you're always in this epicenter of change, right? You do something, you sell it, you hire, you strategize, then you try to sell again conferences, right? You learn new primitives. So it's a highly intellectually stimulating industry where you meet a lot of people, and where I have a very natural fit, right? Because crypto is highly social. I remember when we were pivoting, we had conversation. We already had SV icons, right? And I decided to have conversations with our speakers. So I was talking to Avichal from Electric Capital, and we were trying to understand where he sees next interesting primitives in crypto. And he was, Georgi, but tell me why. And then he started asking why, like, going deeper, why. And the ultimate takeaway from this in-depth conversation was that, you have basically two ways to build startup. First is there are already ideas, right? And then you can just improve based on this, and follow the same path and build something interesting, right, in this vertical. And good example for this is, okay, you have DEXs, decentralized exchanges on Ethereum, everyone knows about it, but then if new ecosystem happens, right, with new value propositions such as, let's say, Aptos, right, and DEX is still needed on Aptos, right, so you can just copycat what's happened on Ethereum and build on Aptos, execute it, right, and then you will have some win, right. And there are second type of ideas which will make you happy when they are radically different, right? So it implies that they should be very against common sense, and then this can make your generative side of energy very satisfied because you build this. And then we ended up realizing that this is actually what we are excited, right? Like something non something a bit contradictory, right? But that can completely change the shape of things, and that's how we ended up in privacy space.
Yeah, that's great. Moving on to things that you enjoy doing, let's talk about SV icons. We've referred to SV icons couple of times in our conversation, but SV icons is Silicon Valley icons, a community of like-minded people from Stanford, like mostly 99%, who come together to talk with Silicon Valley icons. How the idea now SV icons has turned into this great community, like huge community, Lots of stories, like people talking together after dinners, discussing ideas, discussing startups, discussing careers. How did it all start, and where is it going?
Hmm. Yeah, by the way, now it's icons
Icons.
because we expanded to New York.
Oh, okay.
So now we have icons Silicon Valley and New York chapter. So it's a very organic expansion because a lot of Stanford founders, but and just well-known people also live in New York, right? So that's we shouldn't limit ourselves with Silicon Valley. But Silicon Valley started, Icon started from my first idea, no, from my second idea when I was a second year MBA student about to finish it. And then the startup idea that we were building with Nika was a social app focused on college students that allows to build network around shared interests. And the problem was that okay, I was GSB student, but I didn't know engineering students,
Hmm.
and I didn't know, and them they didn't know alums, they didn't know sustainability, right? But then you have a lot of shared interests that never overlap with these people because you never meet them, right? So the idea was okay, if there are shared interests, right, and also shared hobbies, you can unite these people based on a common denominator, which is trust. And we have built an app where these people can connect with each other, but we never realized that it's such a big problem to actually to incentivize people to open the app. So app is one of the biggest hurdles now, right, for anyone uh, to to use any service. And then back then we had, I like one of my friends actually is his name is Jonathan, and he was 1 year below me, and he started inviting a lot of speakers, mostly for Zoom sessions and later in person. And then he basically shared that he cold emails these people. They're super interested to meet, right, and talk in front of Stanford students. So I was just, why don't I try a similar thing, right? And start with Stanford professors. I told them that they would help me to build this app, right? Because people download and request to join. And then I started hosting these events to incentivize people to download the app and request. And at the same time, I was introducing certain barriers. So whoever was joining the event, they had to create the event and therefore kind of bootstrap this network effects, right, of supply side of the app. But then, so I was basically trying to incentivize certain behaviors inside the app. Fast forward 1 year, the app never worked, right? But this community was created. So, and then I thought, okay, there's a huge value that is already created. Why don't we just use one of the distribution channels that already there, such as Telegram? And I like Telegram because of the group feature. It's a great tool for groups and for communication within groups. So I basically brought everyone to Telegram and continued hosting these events. And this event was a great source of wisdom because first you connect with a speaker, right? And you can invite whoever you want. First year I was interested in VCs, so I invited all top 20 VCs. Right, so I was interested in what are the verticals they're investing, how they decide to invest, and just generally I was interested to connect with them. And then supply side was growing, right? So we had more and more people coming to the events, joining the group, helping us in different things, right? Such as space, cleaning, note taking. They were providing ideas. And that's how we ended up creating SV icons, building this distribution channel, right? And then, I've hosted first 85 events, and we were hosting with Chingiz Aizada in their backyard. First, maybe 20 events, then we were hosting at Will's place. So we had yeah, a lot of support from the folks from the community. But then, I started receiving actually inbound, like people actually wanted to host themselves. So for like Isada proposed, why don't we do like AI events, and she will co-host this with Chingis. Simba proposed also to start hosting, and then I thought it's a great opportunity to grow the community, to make sure this new host also have great experience and the value, and since then we added 7 more hosts in New York, here in the Bay. You guys also are considered as hosts in the hub, and yeah, so it turned to the fascinating community.
This is great. How has creating community has helped you personally? If you can share some of the points, like.
I think there are two ways that it helped me. First, it helped me a lot in whatever I was doing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
first, it helped me to figure out, right, what we are doing, because whenever we turn to crypto, right, I immediately called people from Stanford Blockchain Club, from like, because they were all already my friends, right, coming to Icons, and then we just like, guys, explain me. So it basically hacked the information access, right? So now, if there's need for certain information, it's very accessible for me to just call the original source of this information, and instead of having a lot of like BS layers, I can directly have this information within a matter of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So second is actually access to people, right? So when we started fundraising, it was a beer market. We already knew a lot of VCs, right? But we needed way more. So this distribution channel and then this community turned super helpful, because they were connecting me to everyone, and in a very open and welcoming way, without any obligation, because they already came to the event, right? They had some value, they appreciated this, and then they were connecting me to all their network. So that's how we ended up actually raising and having so much support from this community, right? And I think the third part is like still having a lot of inspiration nowadays, right? So now, even though I'm not hosting myself, right, I'm doing like mostly on the supervision sides, right? I'm entering new hosts. I'm thinking how we can expand. I'm responsible for new initiatives. So now we have also, founders matching. We have investor founders matching. So there are different initiatives that we are pursuing that I'm enjoying. But also, every time the event is happening and I'm interested in the speaker, I come here and I'm super excited, right, to learn. So this learning path never ends. So I'm 95%, let's say, doing startup, and then there's still this 5% that can be occupied by something exciting. And this is obviously SU icons now, right? That I'm coming and enjoying this new source of information.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You are originally Georgian, a small country, former Soviet Union, and you lived and worked in Russia. You mentioned VTB Capital as an investment associate, right? When you were taking your first steps in Silicon Valley, or even later when you were fundraising, has this, like in connection with the recent events with between Ukraine and Russia, most of the comments I receive, I read, the Russian founders seem to be mentioning that there sort of a hostility, even, or some sort of a negative vibes going around in Silicon Valley towards founders who have connections with Russia. Can you tell me how your experience has been? You worked in Russia, and you also worked during your MBA years. You worked in Ukraine, right? And in Horizon Capital, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
I actually never felt anything, because mostly when people were asking me where I'm from, like from the day one in 2019 at GSB, I was saying I'm from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because for most of people, from means like where you lived before, but from for me is always like who do I feel?
Yep.
And I was feeling Georgian,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even though I was most of the time in Russia, right? But I was spending all my summers in Georgia, so I have very strong bonds with Georgia. So, and I think it's kind of people never realized or they never thought that I actually spent most of my life in Russia before, so they were always associating me with Georgia. So that's why it never actually impacted me.
All right. Great. You also mentioned previously you had a professional sports career in judo and sambo, right? And why did you give up on your dream? Let's let's put the question this way.
Yeah, so I was a bit bored being sambo wrestler. Actually, what was happening is I was interested both in sambo and judo,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like in sambo 70. It's a school in Moscow that where you have school, you have classes, and you have sambo judo in between,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I was doing very well in sambo, but I had always some problems with judo. For example, all my injuries came. I had ACL, I broke my arm, right? So all my injuries were somehow happening in judo when I was going to pretty high medals, right? In national championships. And like I spent there 10 years, right? And on the year 9, I was getting more and more bored with being athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of okay, so I have this life which is university, right? College. And it's interesting, people have different interests, right? In verticals. But wrestling was always felt a bit isolated,
Yep.
right? So, and even though it was super engaging, right, and interesting, uh, I was getting more bored more and more, right? And then I was also having a push from my parents. They never wanted me to become a professional athlete,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "Okay, Georgie, so you cannot waste your time after you graduate, right? Because when you study at university, it's a good justification. Okay, you're wrestling, but you're not losing time. And then when you're 20, and I was like, I finished, I think, when I was 21. Okay, you cannot really afford this, right? Because now you start losing your time that you can devote to professional, like business career.
Mm-hmm. But like judo and the professional sports has helped you a lot. Like as you mentioned, one of the points being you're extremely competitive. And now, like when doing startup, like finally you found that like level of competition, level of like dopamine levels at the same level as you were back then doing professional sports.
Hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite speakers that we had at Icons is Peter Fenton.
Yep.
He is CEO of Benchmark, and I was listening his podcast recently, and he said he shared this interesting concept about three energies of founders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so first is competitiveness, right? And you always want to, like all VCs, want to optimize on this, right? Because they want to win. Second is generative energy, and it's basically this passion for creation, right? And third is satisfaction energy, and this is food, sex, sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So and then I think in this framework of three energies, right? My wrestling career was devoted to competitive energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my generative energy there was limited after several years because you kind of understand that you benchmark it to the life that happens outside, right? And outside was my university, right? And different verticals. I started being interested in also entrepreneurship there. So and then in startup we have all like these two energies are optimized, right? It's highly competitive, especially crypto, right? And it's highly generative because you always have to ideate, right? How to outcompete, or how to make sure you don't outcompete but go within new vertical. So yeah, I think that's basically what happened with startup.
Yeah. Did you also find that like the perfect balance of the three energies when you came to Stanford while doing your MBA and while doing your master's degree?
I was actually a bit lost when I was at Stanford, especially during the first 2 years, because you might think that I mean, adjustment for me was a bit tough. So people, for example, right when I just started school, I couldn't really relate to many people, right? And then people were telling that I'm too direct,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm coming from different cultures, so it was really hard to establish connections. But then we had touchy feely art of self coaching. So I started understanding how to approach people, how to make sure you don't come across in a negative way. So I learned this, but these 2 years were devoted to adjustment more than anything else.
Wow. So for you, MBA has been adjusting to a new culture, new environment.
Yeah, new culture, new environment, new information, right? Also, because you came to MBA, and you spend most of your life in Eastern Europe, right, in Russia and Georgia. So it's very different, right? Also from the knowledge perspective, right? Because suddenly you learn everything about tech, but outside of tech, you also learn about different verticals, right? What's crypto, what's AI, what's like sustain, like green energy. Um, but then you also learn how to talk to people here, right? How to make sure they are willing to help you, how to provide value, right? So you have so many different things happening at the same time that you're drawn into like full serendipity, right? In terms of your choices, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what is great in this serendipity, whatever is happening is highly beneficial, right? Okay, if you don't pursue something, right? If you don't go to the ski trip with your like classmates who are, let's say, in VC, right? You will still spend time with professor of entrepreneurship who will teach you something great, right? So trade-offs are more or less equal
Mm-hmm.
because you have greatest people surrounding you, and that's, I think, why it was such a crucial step for me. That is still, by the way, happening,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the value of what we're doing here.
Yeah. That's the community that we're creating. So let's now concentrate and talk a little bit about Georgian startup VC tech ecosystem. Let's move back home and consider that before, for most of the countries we work with, the next big avenue to go was Russia. Obviously, like there were some startups in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. After doing something great, they would go directly to Moscow to raise venture capital, to do some stuff. And we know many founders from, like, for instance, Turkmenistan who did great things in Moscow. And the ecosystem was like really fruitful. And now it seems like there are no avenues there. Do you think United States, Silicon Valley, is the next logical avenue to come to expand and to build great products for Georgian founders?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they better to concentrate on those like a closer markets, closer, bigger, faster growing markets? There's China, there's East Asian countries, there are MENA region.
Yeah, I think for Georgian founders, Silicon Valley is a place to learn,
Okay.
first of all, right? Because if all Georgian founders move to Silicon Valley, no one will be left in Georgia, right? And um, and you need high skilled founders building great products in Georgia to make sure that the country achieves full potential, right? And since everything in tech now, that should be one of the core priorities.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that Silicon Valley is the necessity to come and learn from here, because what I feel and what I see, right? I see like, okay, we had several Georgian founders coming here, and I went to Georgia for a month and met a lot of founders, and the gap that we have between the innovation here and what's happening in Georgia is immense. So it's like people are building completely unrelated and outdated products there, right? So we are talking about, I was talking about target ideas, right? But then um, I was able to get out of target idea space because, no matter what you do, if you are surrounded with greatest people, right, and allocators, and then velocity of your iterations is like relatively quick, right? You iterate, you get new people, you have this feedback loop that is happening with the greatest people. You will get out of it, right? And we see a lot of, let's say, Stanford undergrads. They start with completely something useless, right? But then they finally are getting, right? So with icons, right? We had so many people, all my friends, right, figuring out, okay, trying this, that, then crypto, then blah, blah. And now suddenly we see that all of them figured this out because they had right people surrounding them. So, but imagine that you don't have this resource and you have only, you start with target idea and then you go to the next target idea, next target idea, next target idea. And what I saw happening in Georgia, that these people just end up doing same unnecessary things that never succeed, right? Without having the right feedback loop, because the asymmetry is pretty huge, right? Because even now, right, I had a meeting with Georgian community here, and you might think that, okay, this Georgian community might be very educated and developed, and they know what to suggest, how to guide startups. And I agree that in most of the use cases, right, within the vertical they're in, they are good to mentor it, right? For example, right. So if you're in Google, right, you can understand, in within maybe data center and space, you might understand that, okay, if Georgia doesn't have uh, like good infrastructure, right, for good internet, good and then it limits potential of the country for founders to come and build things, right? But you likely won't know, right, how to build good outcomes in startups, right? Because you're in big tech. But then because you see a lot of startups happening around you, and you read some books, right, of like Steve Blank's Lean Startup or something like this, right? Then you think that you become an expert, but actually you don't, right? Because you just read something, and then you start expressing yourself by and pretend that you're an expert, and actually you're making harm instead of just helping the founders in Georgia. Because, for example, like one of the suggestions was Georgians should understand the problem space, and then what is the problem and solve this problem, and then this might, and then they should use like lean methodology, right? But then if you dig deeper, you can understand that if Georgian use lean, right, for expert oriented verticals, they will never achieve anything, because they will go to nearby countries, start asking, let's say they will ask Lithuanian like oil and gas company, what are the problems? They will say problems, but Lithuania has their own entrepreneurs, right? That, and they will have access to local capital as well as to Steve Blank's like Lean Startup book, right? So there is no competitive advantage for Georgian founder to build for nearby country, right? That can enable them to expand and build this ecosystem, right, of successful entrepreneurs. So a lot of suggestions, right, that these people might provide, even though they have great pedigrees, right, that we call, is very out of the context, directions for the founders that will be mostly misleading. So that's why I think, for these founders, right, what is crucial for them to come to Silicon Valley and be highly criticized by local community, right? Go everywhere, like to the hub, right? Go to the pitch night sessions and like talk to founders, talk to VCs, right? And understand what are the major pitfalls without heavily relying or on on reputation of Google employees, right? Because Google is a great company. This doesn't necessarily mean that they can provide any helpful advice for founders.
Hmm. This is great. Like because like standing from Silicon Valley, if you analyze the region, like Georgia seems to be one of the countries which is getting more attention from like foreign investors, especially like considering 500 startups opening there, like the Georgian office and doing lots of activities. Even like Uzbek, Kazakh startups are going to 500 to participate in Georgia. Like access to foreign capital and like number of VCs opening, the foreign VCs opening in Georgia and like looking to the region from Georgia. It seems like the Georgian ecosystem doing something right. And which leads me to my next question. Do you believe that the next unicorn could be from Georgia?
I think Georgia has higher chances since we have this movement of if Startup 500
Mm-hmm.
is in Georgia, there's a high likelihood, right? I don't know. I know several people for Startup 500, and they're highly intelligent, so
Mm-hmm.
they can understand, right, how to educate, how to provide critical feedback, right,
Mm-hmm.
for these founders, and how to make sure that they're navigating in the right direction. Though, for example, right, Startup 500 is a highly B2B focused accelerator, right? So, okay, if you go to Georgia, you focus B2B market, Georgia is 3.6 million, right? And B2B market is very small. No one actually buys B2B in Georgia, right? And uh, like they prefer building, right, themselves, like it's like India in this
Mm-hmm.
case. So then probably it's like you should focus on some other verticals, right, with the primitives that allow Georgian founders to expand beyond. Um, but yeah, still, proximity to of these major ecosystems to Georgian founders, to Georgian ecosystem, is definitely a huge step.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think uh, I'm not sure that these Georgian founders are exposed to, let's say Silicon Valley,
Okay.
right? So they have some information. They come here. I know that one community is bringing founders here. They stay for a week or so. I'm not sure that this week or so can be helpful for anything,
Yeah.
right? Because they have to, I was actually telling that Georgian founders should and Georgian ecosystem should learn from Kazakh, like
Yeah.
with Draper University and with this program, because what I observed that most of the founders coming from Kazakhstan, right, with the support of the hub, to Draper University, like they all changed ideas ultimately.
Yep.
Do you
Yeah.
have the same
Yeah.
observation?
Yeah. Yeah. Like the ones who didn't change, they return back. The ones who have pivoted, changed, or start something new, they like the market and they concentrate on US, building something new.
But even in the local markets, right? I think
Yeah.
it feels that most of the startups somehow pivot or
Yeah.
change their
Yeah.
vision, right? Because they realize that what they were doing before didn't make much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And lots of things like the Draper program, the hero training program. Tim is he's a legend, and the program he has put together, it's like it concentrates more on a person as a founder, self development. They have this, I think like very 1 week of survival week where you go to a outskirts and you have to live outside in tents and yeah, the program is great and it's going really great. Let's play this role. If you are now in a position to convince a US, one of the big name VCs, to invest in Georgian startups, what arguments would you use to invest in those guys? Like, what makes them different? What gives them competitive advantage over others?
I think in this context, the only criteria that can convince US, like Silicon Valley VC, to invest is traction, right? If they see this hockey stick growth that is happening, and this growth can happen outside of Georgia, right? And it doesn't grow um, with requirements, to be regulated, let's say in each market. So it
Mm-hmm.
implies that it's somehow permissionless, right? App or website, right? And it covers major countries with the language that they speak. This will be the only way to convince U.S. investors, right, to invest in Georgian startup. Um, Otherwise, it's a huge gap of trust, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how can you build trust with major allocators, VCs, especially when you live outside,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's about impossible.
Yeah, I wanted to more concentrate on positive arguments. Like, even if you currently don't believe this, what
Mm-hmm.
arguments could be used? Back in Uzbekistan, there was a Georgian bank, the first ever foreign bank, I think, opened in Uzbekistan, the TBC Bank. And they were really great. The service was awesome. And I think, like, because of Georgia being 3.9 million population and the market being so small, they had to expand. Like, they had to go to Azerbaijan, they had to go to Uzbekistan and other countries. So now they're like a London Stock Exchange listed company, bank, who is doing digital banking services in many other countries. And one of the strong points being like the Georgian founders following the step of TBC Bank will not concentrate on a small market, which is Georgia, 3.9 million, and they will have to go outside the country, which is kind of a positive side for like to invest into founders.
I would say yes and no, right?
Yeah,
Because with Uzbekistan, TBC Bank, they had some sort of first mover advantage because Uzbekistan just opened up.
yeah.
Right, and then they were okay. Like many banks decided, okay, let's open new bank and try to get in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like when TBC goes to Uzbekistan, there's a lot of political will that is happening on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a well-known brand, and then Uzbekistan authorities can also basically let in. Let's imagine you're a startup, right? Started by unknown founder with high willingness to get to this to be in TBC shoes.
Yeah.
So it becomes highly improbable,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think if we want to focus on positive side, there are still opportunities, right? So I think there are criteria that we should define as uh, must. Yeah, it's like yeah, must do criteria, right? And must have, I would say, criteria. And these criteria should be right that okay, it shouldn't be highly regulated expansion,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're a US startup, you have certain idea. Let's say it's AI or like whatever or crypto.
So far, AI so far that might get regulated
Yeah,
with all everything going on.
yeah, but you can still capture right
Yeah,
some
yeah.
advantage. If it is just a website that provides opportunities for creators or for writers to write better whatever is there, right, scripts for the novels.
Mm-hmm.
Right, this idea by default is it's permissionless, right? Everyone can access this website, and then it's kind of product led,
Mm-hmm.
what implies that even if your focus is writers communities, right, and but if it's like product led, then you can focus on marketing to individuals who will love the product, who will upsell in their subsequent communities.
Yep. Thank you so much, Georgie. Uh, this has been a great conversation. If you can wrap up in like a couple of sentences, your advice to Georgian founders who are thinking of coming to United States, expanding to US, or building product for US, or any other market outside of Georgia, what would your advice be for them?
Hmm. So my advice would be come to the US, right? Come to Silicon Valley, not anywhere else. spend time with the founders here, spend time with VCs here, and try to listen as much as possible and understand the feedback and where you might improve. And then think about the markets where you can expand, right? So I think there are many use cases where, based on the product stage that you have, this might be the first, right, attempt to build something, and you have just idea. Then you might change everything, right, and focus on like sustainable business model with high NPS rate and kind of good wedge to enter, right? Because so many things are outside of technology. You would think about, okay, like it's all tech, what matters, but and then we have this basic, foundational disrespect to non-tech founders here. But then, by being non-tech founder, right, non-engineer founder in the team, there are so many things that are like equally crucial as tech, right? What is your distribution power, right? How you sell, is it self-service or not, right? How you can build NPS, how you should approach, like how you should fundraise, like there are so many questions that are like equally important, and you have to understand them from the right people. Yep. So yeah, my suggestion would be come here, spend several months, try to get to the communities that are inaccessible for newcomers. Spend time in Central Asian Hub.
Silkroad Innovation Hub.
Yes, Silkroad Innovation Hub. Come to Icon's event and
meet Georgi.
Meet me, and then just be open to completely reinvent yourself and change your strategy.
Yeah, this is great. This has been a great conversation with us today, the founder and CEO of Hinkal Protocol, Georgi. Georgi, thank you so much for taking your time and coming here.
Thanks, Asror. It was a pleasure to talk here about innovation.
Yeah, pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Every step in my moving, always for the crew.